When it comes to bilateral and multilateral trade, that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So we have a lot of bilateral trade framework agreements that have been negotiated, but these agreements don't have a lot of details baked yet. And this decision may weaken the president's hand in a lot of those bilateral negotiations.
Now, the US Supreme Court has ruled against President Donald Trump's global tariffs, which went into effect last year. The court says Donald Trump exceeded his authority in placing the tariffs by use of executive order. This comes after an application brought forward by businesses affected by the tariffs from 12 states, which are mostly Democrat-run. Democrats and Republicans have been reacting to the news. The former Trump Vice President Mike Pence tweeted that the ruling was a victory for the American people. Trump nemesis Gavin Newsom, the Democrat, called on the president to offer a refund to the public. Well, let's hear now from Monica Gorman, who was on President Biden's National Economic Council and also worked in the Department of Commerce and International Trade. Good afternoon, Monica.
Good afternoon.
I wonder what you think is the repercussion, first of all, economically, but then perhaps politically of this decision by the Supreme Court.
Well, this is a landmark ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. The court has ruled that the president cannot unilaterally impose tariffs under the Emergency Economic Powers Act. It is a major separation of powers ruling. The court has been clear that tariffs are taxes and the power to tax lies with the U.S. Congress. And what is interesting here is that this is a decisive ruling. We saw a 6-3 majority from the Supreme Court, so it is decisive.
But it may not actually have such a vast repercussions. I spoke to a trade expert earlier in the programme who suggested that it would be, just about positive for the economy, but wouldn't make that much difference because it doesn't apply to all tariffs, does it?
Well, that's absolutely true. And I think breaking it down, there's two things here. There will be a major question around refunds of IEEPA tariffs. The court has struck those down. IEEPA tariffs comprise, I believe, about 50% of the tariff revenue that's coming in right now. That is now up for grabs. The court did not really provide a roadmap. That is going to go back to the Court of International Trade. So I think we can expect extensive litigation and continued uncertainty for industry in terms of what is going to happen with refunds of the IEEPA tariffs. But that said, there are many other statutes at play here. The administration has taken a very robust use of Section 232. Those are the industry-specific tariffs, such as for autos or for steel. I think we can continue to expect use of Section 232. And this ruling doesn't really do anything to Section 232. Those tariffs continue to stand. The administration also has other statutes that it can draw upon here. And I think they've been quite clear that they have a plan B. So I am waiting to see, but I fully expect announcements soon as to how they will continue to maintain a high tariff environment.
Well, on that plan B, I'll come back to that in just a second, but just in case anyone was confused by your reference to IEEPA, that stands for International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which was the act that Donald Trump used to bring in these tariffs. So let's talk about plan B. What might Donald Trump do you think? Come out with, if you were in his shoes, what would you do to respond to this ruling?
Well, again, there's a variety of statutes. I think what we will see is the use of several statutes as opposed to one, the IEEPA statute. Section 232 for industry-specific statutes, again, so far there's been a very robust use of that, very broad interpretations, including, for example, not just on steel and aluminum products, but derivative products and products that may contain a little bit of what is covered by that statute. That is possible. We'll see more. Section 301, that's been used primarily in a U.S.-China trade context, but it can be used in other contexts if the administration chooses.
Right.
There's also something, Section 122, the president can impose up to 15% tariffs immediately for 150 days. That is available to him immediately. So again, a variety of potential options here.
Indeed, and we're going to be hearing live from Donald Trump at 5:45. So we'll try and bring you that statement when we get it so you can hear what that plan B might be. Just then looking at this, because it sounded to me like he does have quite a lot of options there. But let's talk about the geopolitics of this, because you saw Donald Trump's emergency tariffs bring world leaders sort of scurrying to Washington to try and curry favour with him. Do you feel that this ruling makes him less powerful politically, or does it not make that much difference because he could, as you've just set out, launch some sort of mitigatory measures?
Well, there's a practical question here in terms of tariffs themselves, and then there's the broader geopolitical context. And I think for tariffs themselves, we are likely to see a continued high tariff environment in the United States. Again, he's got lots of statutes by which he can do that. But when it comes to bilateral and multilateral trade, that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So we have a lot of bilateral trade framework agreements that have been negotiated, but these agreements don't have a lot of details baked yet. And this decision may weaken the president's hand in a lot of those bilateral negotiations. It is possible that a number of countries have been waiting to see where this will go. And as the US continues to negotiate the details, this, in many cases, may strengthen the hands of foreign governments in those negotiations.
Fascinating. So the power play angle is very interesting. Just finally and briefly, Donald Trump said he's considering bombing Iran. It's a sort of cheeky question, I guess, but could this ruling today sort of consciously or unconsciously affect his thinking on that big decision on Iran?
I wouldn't presume to speculate on the president's thinking, but we've certainly seen the buildup happening. I would suspect these are separate questions for the administration.
Monica Gorman, thank you very much for joining us. Monica Gorman there, who was on President Biden's National Economic Council.